For more on the ANC's NEC meeting taking place this weekend, we now speak to political analyst Prof Sethulego Matebesi. He joins us now virtually. Prof, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. Quite certainly a mouthful there being heard from the Secretary-General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula. There are a number of issues that the ANC will have to dissect this weekend. Let's start off here. What are your expectations when it comes to this NEC meeting?
Hi, good evening, Mbali, and good evening to your viewers. Well, very interesting that the GNU on the agenda of the African National Congress. We know this particular matter has been a key problem, not only for the African National Congress, but also in South Africa, in terms of our political landscape. And clearly, there has been some other major issues in terms of what has been happening within the police and many other issues in its NEC meeting.
And Prof, I mean, when it comes to the issues around crime, and we now know that the issues around what we saw in that explosive press briefing by KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, and dealing with some of those aspects, do you think that the ANC will have to take a lot of time to look into those allegations which have been made? Because at the same time, you know, since then, we have seen that some of these suspects are even going as far as saying that, well, we are politically connected to some within political parties like the ANC.
No, I don't think, these issues will be discussed maybe at a political level, because what has been happening in the public domain does have the potential for reputational damage for the African National Congress on the eve of yet another important election, which is a local government election. So to an extent, they will debate that. But remember, we also know that there are already processes that will be unfolding to deal with this particular matter. And I will not be surprised if some members will say, yes, might be discussing this within the NEC. Let us allow the due process to take place that particular matter, ventilate those processes. But the problem is these allegations, has huge implications for the African National Congress going forward, and it will be interesting to see how they navigate around this particular.
Something else that the ANC is set to discuss is the issues around the US export tariffs and those reciprocal tariffs, which are also set to kick in for countries like South Africa. And also it reminds me of that meeting that President Cyril Ramaphosa had with US President Donald Trump. And when it comes to the ramifications or the implications thereof, when it comes to the country's economy, certainly this is something that the ANC will also then have to touch on, because this will have a dire consequence to job losses in the country.
Yes, most definitely. And unfortunately, this is one of those challenges where it seems that our hands are tied. Because if you look at the posture and the conduct of the American president, he has already concluded that he's not going to hold back on this particular matter. So this is certainly coming for South Africa. It will have huge implications. If you look at our economy is already bleeding. And with these tariffs, I strongly believe that we will have some businesses that is going to suffer in terms of our academia, the funding that USA has provided to some tertiary institutions have already had a very significant impact with the decisions that have been taken. So to a large extent, we're also going to see the damaging effects of this kind of tariff hikes that America implemented against.
Prof, on Sunday, the ANC will then also be talking about the issues around the local government elections. And one would say we are just a few months away from seeing those local government elections in the country. How does the ANC find a way to navigate itself while this commission of inquiry takes place, looking into, of course, political interference within the police force, and also at the same time trying to sway their voters in their favor to continue to entrust them with their vote?
It's going to be very difficult. It has always been very difficult for the in terms of new entrants. And remember, people had new entrants into the political landscape, unlike in the past where there's been a mushrooming of many political parties. If you look at MK Party, it has huge damaging role for the African National Congress. Actually, threatens the dominance of the African National Congress. So going forward, and all the other new political parties, all that, although to a lesser extent, the ANC is only itself to blame. They can enhance their own internal governance procedures and take South Africans into confidence, but it will really take an effort. And perhaps the NEC this weekend will perhaps also use this opportunity to see how they can consolidate what they have and how they can also confront the elephant in the room, and that is the eroding trust that many South African voters that used to vote for a party in the past. How are they going to win them back? And it's not going to be an easy task. It should be daily task of engaging, but whether they will be able to use persuasion, convince others to vote for them, that is another story for another day, because there are so many challenges which, like it then, will have a huge impact on how South Africans vote or even stay away from voting in government elections.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. That's Professor Sethulego Matebesi, political analyst there from the University of the Free State, just giving us his insights in terms of what we can expect from that meeting that takes place within the ANC's NEC this weekend.